Welcome back to Beyond the Campfire. I am your host, Steven the Indian, alongside Will the Cowboy. And today we are talking about the Skinwalkers. This is a topic we've wanted to talk about for a long time. Why are we doing it now? It's because this is our, what is it, Will?
6 month episode, man. We've made it.
6 months. We have been doing
Six
this podcast
months.
for 6 months, half a year. Yeah, so here we
Crazy.
are. Crazy, crazy times. So, Will, anything we should know, say, any announcements before we get into the Walkers of Skin?
Well, like Steven said, we've been doing this for 6 months and there has been a lot of change. I don't know if we can really announce this yet, at least announce the name of it and the topic they're going to be covering. We don't know what days they're going to be releasing, but we have been doing this for 6 months. We have 3 podcasts underneath us. Beyond the Campfire, obviously, you're watching us now. Beyond the Culture, I don't know where that one's at. It's on Steven's channel.
I've been busy. Yeah, that one will be a
He's been busy.
more whenever I have time for it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is still happening. It's still around. It
And
just
we've
might be.
got another podcast. We've got another podcast coming out. Don't know when, but it is in the works. And it's actually not hosted by me and Steven. So this is actual people that decided that they wanted to come underneath Beyond the Media, LLC, our little corporation, and said, we want to work with you and we want help making a podcast. So this officially means that, me and Steven can actually say that we're, entrepreneurs because we're not making money, but our business is technically starting. And it's not just me and Steven, being two weirdos in their mom's garage claiming that they've got a podcast company. It's working. So that aside, look forward to that. Hopefully, I can announce the name, the topic, and everything later. But as Steven said, our s'mores, it has been 6 months, and I thought we needed to do one of the top cryptids out there. So we got the Skinwalker. Okay. Doing my research. And if you know the Skinwalker, buckle in. You might want to watch this on Saturday morning and then watch some cartoons afterwards because it's spooky stuff. So, Steven, do you know what a skinwalker happens to be? Do you have any clue?
I know there are a few theories, but long story short, it is a creature that can shapeshift into a lot of different things. Am I somewhat on track over there?
Someone on track. But what if I told you it's not actually really a creature, but more a person?
A person. Okay,
Mm.
interesting. Tell me more, Will.
So, a skinwalker, and I want to go ahead and put a disclaimer because some Native Americans, Navajos, they find the topic of talking about skinwalkers and Wendigos taboo due to the nature of what they are. And in my description, I wrote down it'll also tell you another reason why they believe and they don't really want to talk about a skinwalker. So, a skinwalker, known in Navajo as, Haley's going to make a clip of me butchering this. Ye na ala de Lushi. Okay. Which basically translates to skinwalker or one who transforms, is a figure of deep terror and malevolence in Navajo culture, representing a type of witch who has the ability to transform into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. These beings are believed to be powerful and deeply evil, wielding their powers of dark purposes. Already
That,
off to a spooky start.
that is some freaky stuff, yeah.
And it gets crazier. Physically, when not transformed, a skinwalker might appear as a human, but often with subtle, unsettling features that hint at their true nature. They might have an unnaturally gaunt appearance with skin that looks too tight, stretched over a skeletal frame. Their eyes are the most disturbing part, often described as glowing or reflecting light in a way that no human eyes should. These eyes are said to hold a malevolent intelligence, betraying their inhuman nature even when in human form. So when they're talking about the eyes, okay, like talking about glowing eyes, you know how like you see a dog and you shine and like if you shine a light at like a dog or a deer or something like that, how their eyes have that glow to it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine seeing that,
But on a person.
but on a person who looks like almost like their skin's so tight, like and they just look inhuman. Like there's just something off about it, and you're just staring at it and you're like, there's something wrong with this person. And I just can't figure out what it is. And then you catch those eyes.
Yeah, no,
Spooky.
that's scary. That is very scary stuff.
So when a skinwalker transforms, it takes on the form of an animal, usually a predatory one, such as a coyote, wolf, owl, fox, or a crow. However, the transformation is not very smooth. Okay. The creature's body might bubble and contort as bones snap and reform. The result is often an unsettling hybrid with animal characteristics, but a lingering sense of something not quite right. For instance, the eyes of the animal might still carry that eerie human like quality, glowing in the dark with an unnatural light. Pretty. I'm already spooked, man.
Yeah, just the thought of like that imagery you described of like bones twisting and things shaking, like this just to actually see that happen to somebody or something is freaky. It
Oh,
almost
yeah.
reminds me of that Stranger Things, the latest season from a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
Uh, when what was that song, Chrissy?
Christy, wake up.
I yeah
I don't want copyright.
yeah I remember watching that. I was watching that late at night, but like she flies up and her like body like just twists
Yeah. So imagine Chrissy
just like
almost
that.
almost not looking human still, right? She's not very much looking human. She has glowing eyes and then all that snapping and that crunching and that twitching and then she like turns into like a wolf or a coyote and she still looks almost human. It's got like feeling of it being human and then those glowing eyes that look human. Mm, 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 mm. And what's even worse, in its animal form, the skinwalker is fast, agile, and almost impossible to track or catch. It can move with supernatural speeds and stealth, blending into the shadows of the night. Some reports describe the creature as emitting a foul stench, like that of decay, hinting at its evil nature. So, not only is this thing terrifying looking, it's fast, and then it smells.
That yeah I it's already scary when something just is freaky looking. But the added attributes of it being fast, like if you see something scary but is slow, you still have some hope that maybe you can run away and
Yeah.
outrun this thing or escape. When something is fast and athletic, though, that just makes it all the more terrifying.
So the Skinwalker's presence is often accompanied by a deep sense of dread and fear, as if the very air is charged with malevolence. It can mimic the voice of people it hears, often calling out in the tones of loved ones or in the voices eerily similar to its intended victim's own. This is usually a trick to lure people from safety. Yeah, that right there, bud. That's the puncher for me. Like just imagine this twisted, like almost you know creepy looking creature, and it calls out in your mom's voice. Steven, come here.
It's using the things you love to bring you to harm. Freaky.
Steven, come to mommy.
That reminds me of the second book of the Hunger Games, Catching Fire. There was a scene where they send these birds
Mhm.
called um, it wasn't the Mockingjays, but it was what the Mockingjays bred with. Oh, the Jabberjays, and they
Mm.
had the Jabberjays learn the voices of people close to them, And so the people in the Hunger Games, they thought they were hearing their like mom's voice or their girlfriend's voice or their sister's voice or whatever it was, and like it freaked them out. So yeah, I guess I knew skinwalkers could shapeshift, but I didn't know they could change their voice. The idea of it mimicking somebody you love's voice,
Mhm.
that is terrifying.
So before I continue with my little description I wrote out here, the mimicking a voice, the way it twists and contorts, and all of this. My theory on what the Skinwalker is, like a lot of people, obviously this is a supernatural being. Okay, this is going to be one of the cryptids that is a supernatural being that we encounter, because people categorize cryptids in different categories. And this just happens to be one of those that is a supernatural being. And I think there's going to be eventually a list of cryptids that me and Steven will never hunt for on the Patreon. I don't care how much money you guys pay us. I am not going looking for Skinwalker. Okay. And before you say you can go to Skinwalker Ranch is apparently a completely different thing. Okay. Not even related to Skinwalkers, more UFOs. Anyways, my thought on what this is and the reason why I really don't want to go mess with it is like Mothman, who knows? Chupa puppy, who knows? It could just be, an unknown dog species we never encountered. But the thing with the Skinwalker that truly terrifies me is my thoughts on things. And that's, as Christians, we know that, and I don't want to get religious on this podcast, but as Christians, we believe that, as long as you have the Lord in your heart and you have God on your side, demons will not harm you. Okay. But as we know, Jesus was in Bethlehem, not Missouri, like the Mormons think. And so that means that the Native Americans probably did not really know Jesus. So therefore, they probably did not have the Lord on their side. Therefore, could it be that the Skinwalker is just some effed up demon,
Very
with the intent of harm?
That's I know we usually do theories at the end, but that's my theory.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, there's no theories on what this thing is. It's a supernatural being
Okay.
that and this is where it gets in. So skinwalkers are feared not just for their physical abilities, but for their powers of black magic. They're said to be able to cause sickness, death, and misfortune with a glance or by using cursed objects. They are also believed to be nearly impossible to kill except with a bullet or knife dipped in white ash, according to some legends. I don't know where we can get some white ash. I'm white, but I'm not ashy. Encountering a skinwalker is considered a deeply ominous sign, and even speaking of them is believed to draw their attention, bringing bad luck or worse. The Navajo are very cautious about discussing skinwalkers openly out of fear of attracting attention. So it really didn't. I mean, based off what you can hear from what I'm reading, the main running idea is in Navajo legend is that the skinwalker is a witch who commits dark magic and is able to transform. And usually when you see one, um like usually when they're a person, they'll kind of have like what's it called, like they'll have like animal skin draped over them, which is usually to give them the power of transformation from some stories I read. So there are a couple like Native American legends we'll probably talk about on this podcast. Skinwalker's the freaking terrifyingest of them all. And we're actually going to get into some stories here shortly. I have 6 stories total. So this might be a little long podcast. It's going to be a lot of me reading stories, Steven screaming like a woman, and we're just going to have fun.
Oh, well, I guess that's better than screaming like I don't know. I'm not gonna finish that sentence.
But if you want something to keep your mind off of this, I'm going to give you guys a challenge. Okay. There are 6 stories. 2 of them I had ChatGPT write because I was curious about how well ChatGPT could write a story. And it took a lot of me yelling at ChatGPT to stop making this sound like ChatGPT. Make it sound like a human wrote it and not a robot. So we've got some actually pretty good stories. So story 1. Okay.
Wait, so we're playing a game, right? So people who are listening to the thing, make sure you put down your bets and guesses on whether it is. What were the options again, Will?
So it's either just going to be ChatGPT or something I found on the internet. Like I mean, I found two from Reddit, two from Quora, and from ChatGPT. You don't have to figure out which ones are from Quora or which ones are from Reddit. You just
Okay,
have to figure out which ones are from ChatGPT.
gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
because ChatGPT gave some pretty good ones.
I actually have not heard these stories either, so I'm actually going to guess along with you,
Mhm.
the audience.
This was kind of my idea because, like I said, these are some pretty effed up stories and some of them were pretty terrifying. So,
But I like it. It's going to be a little bit more engaging than our
yeah,
typical than our
yeah, because I was like, 6 months. We've been doing this 6 months. Let's shake it up a little bit. And like,
kind of fun.
I'm going to openly admit that I did use ChatGPT for two of these stories, and we'll see. We'll have you guys guess, and then after we're done filming, Steven's going to tell me which one he thinks it was. Okay. So we got story number one. You ready?
Let's do it, man.
A little background first. I was serving a 15-year sentence in a penitentiary in southern Arizona. What I was in there for what I was in there for isn't important. During my stay there were countless things that happened that no one could explain. And even more that no one wanted to know more about. It all started with a prison legend. Supposedly, years ago, something awful and unexplained happened in the prison. Every morning, we'd be woken up and expected to stand near the front of our cells while guards visually confirmed we were present and accounted for. Apparently, about a year before I got sent there, the most brutal and unexplainable thing happened during one of these routines. A man who had a cell to himself looked very off during this check. When a guard pulled over another guard to help him check it out, they found it wasn't actually the prisoner they were expecting at all. It was a totally different man. This man was wearing the skin of the other man over him, loosely fitting, draped over him. Apparently looked like a real monster. The scariest things were though was the guy wearing the skin was not an inmate. They had no idea how he even got into the prison, let alone a cell. What worse is that they couldn't even figure out who the hell he was. He wasn't documented anywhere. And what's worse than that, they never even found the body of the man of the skin he was wearing. Pretty grisly stuff. I know. And I realize that's not and that's and I realize that's not the go-to definition of a skinwalker. But what's the prison called? But that's what the prisoners called him. The skinwalker. Didn't help that the guy never talked apparently. Anyways, that's what started the whole skinwalker superstition around the yard. Apparently, the guy got shipped to a different spot about a month after it happened, and just about everyone in Gen Pop felt all the better for it. I heard about the story. I heard about the story on the second day of my stay. Hell of a story to hear to a place in your home for the foreseeable future. Now onto the real shit, though. Sure, that guy was a skinwalker, but all he did in the long run was get an old lifer Navajo inmate to tell everyone about actual skinwalkers. It seemed like a lot of the prison culture actually revolved around them. Now, apparently, skinwalkers are tricky to point out on the spot, but if you manage to survive around one for more than a minute or two, almost everyone can tell the mannerisms are all off. They can mimic human speech, but not replicate it. They twitch maniacally. They have an unnatural um, gait while walking, but apparently they got better with experience. The old Navajo guy, his name was Carl, said that he was sure there was an actual one among the prisoners, slowly picking us off over the years. He called it the Grand Master Skinwalker at one point. Apparently, he thought it had human mannerisms down so well that you might not even be able to tell if it was your cellmate for a day or two. It had to be good. Let's see, where was that? It had to be good. It had to be good. He positioned one night. He would expect the skinwalker to jump at any opportunity for a kill, but this one realized it had a revolving door of people to kill coming to it, and masterfully bided its time, as Carl thought, for years. A lot of guys found humor in it. A lot more were really on edge around it. Every once in a while in prison, people snap. Sometimes you'll find your cellmate swinging in front of your bunk, strung up around the neck by his pant leg. Sometimes you just can't take it anymore. But in our yard, people tended to snap in a very special way. It wouldn't be an outburst at dinner or silent suicide in the night. Guys would just stop talking, hunch over, and shuffle around. Sorry, I lost my place. Hunch over, shuffle around. Any friendships they had would be mostly out the window. They would turn into a loner during rec time. They would let their hair hang in front of their face. No one liked to talk about it. Like if they did, it would happen to them next. I felt the same way. I didn't know if it was a skinwalker or just people going crazy, but I didn't want to find out. It wasn't clockwork or anything, but every time someone snapped in this way, it wasn't more than a couple weeks before they were shipped off or transferred to God knows where without anyone else knowing beforehand. Then there was the nighttime occurrences. Short, loud bursts of sound echoed through my cell block during all hours of the night on a regular basis. It sounded like a mix between a pig's dying squeals and nails on a chalkboard. Just another thing no one liked to talk about. Even scarier were the shadows and footsteps. The block was dimly illuminated in the night by a few lights hanging from the ceiling outside the cells. I myself saw shadows flit across my walls on regular occasion. When there were definitely no guards near my cell, one time near the end of my sentence, I woke up, looked at my back wall, and found a perfect silhouette of a person standing there. But when I looked, my bunkmate was asleep, and no one was outside my cell. And the footsteps. Everyone hated the effing footsteps. They were the scariest part. In the night, sometimes more rarely than the shadows, you would hear ungodly fast footsteps. They sound like wet feet slapping on tile floor. Whatever caused them would fly from one end of the block to the other in a dead sprint. Whatever it was inhumanly fast. If you happen to be awake before it started, by the time you hear the footsteps on the side of your cell and whipped your head around to see the thing running by, it sounded like it was 3 cells past you. Everyone hated the footsteps. I agreed. I thought they were the worst. I was released from that place about a month ago, and I have more stories than I can count. I swear it was nearly my turn. About a week before I was discharged, my cellmate and a good friend of mine snapped in the same kind of way. I didn't sleep for an entire week. Well, I did sleep, of course, but never for more than a few minutes at a time. Never turned my back on the guy. The scariest thing, I woke up one night to him somehow shaking his body through the bars of our cell. For reference, I couldn't get anything past my shoulder through them. The worst part, though, he was coming back into our cell. On the day of my release, I didn't say a word to him, just left. He seemed fine with it. So was I. I had made it through 15 years of prison fights, gang disputes, and for all I know, skinwalker abductions. I left through the front gates a free man. As I walked along the fence for the rec yard, I spotted my cellmate standing off on his own, like he had for the last week or so. I shook my head, not even really sure if it was him anymore. I took one last look over the yard, this time from the other side of the fence. I wish I hadn't. There, standing off on the other side of the yard, was Carl, slouched over, eyeing the other inmates and twitching maniacally.
That is freaky. Is that the end of the story?
Yeah.
Wow.
So do in
Wow.
prison. Here's these stories about skinwalkers from this old Navajo man named Carl. Turns out Carl was the skinwalker the whole time.
Walker the whole time. Mm. That's a good story. I loved the suspense of, is there a skinwalker there? You're hearing this from this old guy, and in the end, he's the one who's the skinwalker himself. I guess it's time to guess. So I'll pause for a few seconds, or I'll actually encourage the audience to pause so you can make your bets. But I am going to guess that this was a ChatGPT story because I don't know, it seemed almost a little too polished. But let me know. Am I right? Is this ChatGPT or is this real?
Wait, do you want me to tell you now or later?
Uh, I think it'd be best to do it at the end of each episode, or
Okay.
uh, or yeah, as you tell each story. So
That one was actually from Reddit.
that one was from Reddit. Ah, okay, man. Well, that guy was a good writer. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was very polished. It's very nice. So okay, cool.
All right. Ready for the next one?
Let's do the next one, brother.
I believe I encountered two or more skinwalkers. I don't have solid proof like a picture or video, but I do have a story. One I remember quite vividly. It was August 14th, and a meteor shower was going on until the 24th. I was curious to see it, so I went out late at a certain time. It was exactly 1 a.m. I was outside the front of my house, standing in the middle of the road, staring at the clear night sky, watching some comets pass just by myself. Just to note, in front of my house across the road is a good 5 acres of unclaimed desert land. I'm from Arizona, where Navajo skinwalkers seem to originate from. I was standing there once again when I heard odd noises. I'd want to say the crunching of a branch or something like that. This noise came directly from in front of me, about 100 yards away. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It's important to note that after this whole experience, I did my research and everything seemed to add up to my story. So I'll be explaining why I believe it was skinwalkers. Now it's far away, but I read a story, and this person mentioned that the farther away the sound of or skinwalker might seem, the closer it actually is. I'm only mentioning this because not even 10 seconds later, I heard very strange noises coming from the left side of the front of my house. This was close to about 50 feet away. I was already spooked, as living in Arizona for 6 years, these noises were unfamiliar and different. I was always out at night. I could tell when it was just a desert rabbit or a couple of coyotes. As these strange noises occurred, the worst feeling I've ever felt in the 17 years I've been alive came over me. It was strange and made me feel very uneasy. It was that gut feeling like I knew something bad was going to occur or already occurring. That sense of impending doom. Then, as fast as the noises started, they stopped. But it was a short pause because I heard faint talking coming from where the same spot the noises had happened. It sounded just like some little girl. Couldn't make out a single word as it was quiet, faint, and practically gibberish. But it was feminine. I know that much. It stopped again, and then immediately after, clear as day, twice as loud as the talking before, it said my name, called out to me, Noah, in the voice of a little girl, in my general direction. In that very moment, I don't think I've ever been more truly terrified. Safe to say, I was super freaked out now. I began to walk towards my front door. Note, I read that skinwalkers tend to mimic the voices of people and sound very human like in order to lure people. I also read that in most cases with kids, skinwalkers will purposely lurk around or near houses where everything unfolded happened just outside mine. My heart was racing in this moment. And that gut feeling I got was still there, just as bad, if not worse. I was at the bottom of my driveway now, already turned around, heading to the front door of my house. As bad and freaky as things already were, you'd figure things couldn't get any worse. That was until on the right side of me, I heard the gravel of our front yard crunch. It was deep and long, two crunches coming towards me. Now, not any further than 20 feet away. Unfortunately, I hadn't seen anything with my own eyes, as it was dark and the steps had occurred on the opposite sides of my sister's car to the right of me, so I didn't have a clear line of sight as I walked up the driveway. At this moment, I was scared out of my literal mind. When I heard the crunch of the gravel, I was on the verge of calling out or even yelling at whatever thing was coming towards me, but I didn't. I refrained from doing it, as my gut told me that initiating something like that would most likely make things worse. I tried my best to keep my composure. The entire inside of me was collectively screaming as a whole at the time. I was at the top of the driveway now. My driveway is slanted. I was no more than maybe 5 feet from the door when on both sides of me these sounds or steps picked up faster, coming towards me. Fortunately for me, I didn't acknowledge the things that happened at the time, or at least I tried my best to figure it for my own safety. And I didn't initiate anything with whatever was truly out there. I made it to the door and locked it quickly behind me. But things just got freakier from there. Whatever just happened had me scared out of my mind. You know, when you have a bad feeling, it tends to go away after the so called bad thing happens? Well, that feeling hadn't gone away, and I was still on high alert. I put the cover over our large dog door. I locked the back door, the garage door, made sure all windows were locked. That bad feeling almost never went away the whole night. I was still freaked out after what just happened, and everyone was asleep. I trusted my sister was still awake. I went to her room. She wasn't. In the middle of her sleep, she said I could come in. So I sat on the carpet floor of her bedroom, anxiously, praying nothing bad would happen again. Of course, my sister is the only one in the house who keeps her blinds up at night. God knows why. And of course, the screen of her window had fallen off, and she never bothered to put it back, so it was just glass. I could see the entire dark backyard. And if there was anything in my backyard, it could see me now too. I sat in a room for a good while. I want to say maybe 15 minutes had passed when abruptly, out of nowhere, I heard faint whistling. Very faint. But however, however close it was didn't matter because it was coming straight from my backyard. It got closer. That whistling began to sound like flute. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Note, upon reading another person's story, it is believed that I could have heard the flute of a Navajo or Navajo witch, which is directly related to skinwalkers. So now, in the comfort of my own home, came this strange music. Once I had identified it sounded like flute music, it was gone. I quickly got up, told my sister good night, didn't say a word after, and left her room. I was still freaked out, alone, with everyone asleep. I turned on some lights and sat at the bar in my kitchen. At one point, I even sought to wake my dad up just so I could be in comfort of another person. But I was 17. As I sat, once again came the faint crunching of gravel rocks from my backyard this time. Whatever was there, I could hear it, as I was no more than 5 feet away from the back door. Then came a small, short knock on the glass of the back door. Uh, I didn't notice it at first until I had took notice. I didn't notice it at first until I had taken notice as it didn't seem to stop. I waited. With every 1 minute came one singular knock. This just scared me even more. Skinwalker or not, something was on the other side of that door, and I wasn't going to stick around to find out. Luckily for me, my back door has a cover. It's also just glass. I flicked off the lights and walked towards my bedroom. I didn't bother to look at the back door. I stayed in my room the rest of the night. I never left. I was up for a good 3 hours after everything had occurred, and even then I heard strange noises from outside my very own window, too. I remained freaked out for the rest of the night, all the way up until I fell asleep. The next morning, everything seemed fine. I truly don't know what happened that night, but I'm glad I went with my gut. I might not be here if I hadn't. And then this person gives tips. Based off my experience and ones I've read of others, I have some tips for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. They call out to you or try and lure you. Do not go in that general direction or anywhere near that way. Get as far away as possible and make sure it's away from the skinwalkers. Never, under any circumstances, initiate anything with these beings. Do not call back to them. Do not talk back to them if spoken to, and do not acknowledge them. Acknowledging them might just put you in immediate, inevitable danger. Make sure you're not in an open area or anywhere where help can't be found. Make sure that you get to a safe place or specific area where you can't be harmed, caught, stalked by these beings, etc. Wherever it is you're going to get away from the skinwalkers. And I can't stress this enough. Get to that place in an orderly fashion. You might be in danger at the time, but you can avoid it. Take your time, keep your composure, be safe, and most importantly of all, be smart. Be quick, be quick thinking. If you get that bad gut feeling I did, then trust me when I say you need to go off instinct in your gut.
That does sound like good tips.
Yeah.
Usually, if I'm walking in the woods and I hear a voice call out to me, telling me to come over there, then I generally think, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to carry on a conversation with that thing or walk toward it in that direction. But wow, yeah,
Yeah.
another spooky Skinwalker story. I think that one is from Reddit
It's actually from Quora.
or Quora.
But yeah,
Got
it's not a Chat GPT one.
okay, yeah, that one felt a little bit choppier, uh,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, okay, it felt like there was there was enough randomness to it to not be a chat GPT script per se. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. That story, that one is one of those that it's like based off the spelling of the person, because like there was some grammar problems that I was trying to navigate through. Not trying to pick on these people.
right.
But that one to me, just the way it's typed out, the like little tidbits and everything, that one truly terrifies me because it's like that one could be real.
Yeah.
Like just like imagine you're like 17 years old. You say, I'm going to go look at a meteor shower. And as you're watching this meteor shower, all of a sudden, not only do you hear noises, you hear a little girl call your name, Steven. You know,
Freaky stuff.
dude,
Freaky stuff for sure.
oh my gosh.
How many more stories you got? Well,
All right, so we've got one, two, three. We got four more stories.
four more stories. All right, let's keep it rolling.
We're gonna crank them out. It was supposed to be a routine camping trip in the Arizona desert. I'd done it dozens of times before. Just me, my tent, and the wide open sky. The solitude out there is something I've always loved. You can see for miles. The stars so bright they feel close enough to touch, and the quiet. It's a kind of peace you can't find anywhere else. But that evening, as I set up camp in a remote spot near some rock formations, something felt off. The desert was unusually still. No wind, no distant coyotes' howls, not even the scurrying of small creatures in the brush. Just silence, pressing in from all sides. I set up my tent and built a small fire as the sun dipped below the horizons, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I tried to shake off the uneasy feelings myself. I tried to shake off the uneasy, unease, telling myself it was just nerves. But the feeling lingered, gnawing at me. As night fell, the silence became oppressive. I sat by the fire, staring out at the endless expanse of desert. That's when I noticed something in the distance. A figure, barely visible against the darkening sky. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a rock or a bush, um, casting a strange shadow. But as I watched, it started to move. It was walking towards me. My heart skipped a beat. Out here, miles from the nearest town, there shouldn't have been anyone around. I reached for the flashlight in my pack. Before I could grab it, the figure came into view just at the edge of the firelight. It was a person, or at least it looked like one, but there was something wrong. It was hunched over, its movement awkward, almost mechanical. As it stepped closer, I couldn't see its face. And that's when the fear hit me. It looked almost like me, but not quite. The features were there: eyes, nose, mouth, but distorted. Like somebody had tried to sculpt my face from memory and failed. The figure stopped just outside the circle of firelight, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. Then it spoke in a voice that was eerily similar to mine, but off like a bad recording. Help me, it said, the words slow and deliberate, dripping with something that wasn't quite human. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were rooted to the ground. The figure took another step forward, and I finally snapped out of it. I grabbed the burning end of a stick from the fire and thrust it towards the figure. The flames lit up its face, and for a brief moment I saw something in its eyes. Something cold, empty, and utterly wrong. Then it turned and fled, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as it appeared. I didn't stick around to see if it would come back. I packed up my gear in record time and started the long hike back to my truck, constantly looking over my shoulder. The desert was still silent, but now it felt like it was watching me, waiting. By the time I reached my truck and peeled out of there, the sun was just starting to rise. I haven't been back to that spot since, and I don't plan to. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. And out there in the vast emptiness of the desert, I realized that some places, no matter how familiar, aren't as safe as they seem. How we feel?
That that one's freaky because with the first two stories you had kind of an otherness. Like there's me and then there's the otherness.
Yeah.
With this one, this skinwalker is mimicking this dude himself, like his face, his voice, like that. That is just
Dude.
look
Imagine sitting there and you're camping and you've been camping with me. Imagine we're in the woods and all of a sudden outside the firelight, this creature comes and you look at it and it almost looks like you, but not really you. And then it just says, "Help me." And your voice. And it's just oh man.
freaky.
I was going to add something to the last story because they mentioned the whistling sound. And
Mm,
in Native American folklore, it is bad luck to whistle at night because it is believed that if you whistle at night, you are calling on bad spirits, such as the Skinwalker.
I see. Okay, so you don't do it at nighttime. Daytime is,
No.
but nighttime you can.
Yeah, nighttime, bad, bad.
Okay, good to know. Um, if you want to guess before I do, go ahead and pause the podcast right now. But as for my guess, I am going to guess that this one is from Reddit's or Quora.
Chat GBT.
That's a Chat GPT. Really?
Yep. Isn't that
Wow.
cool? It's really good.
That one was good. I love. Okay, it had that unique feature of looking exactly like him. But yeah, okay. Wow. AI man, it writes some good stories. But yeah, so
Yeah. By the way, I think this might be one of our longest episodes. We're pushing.
oh, that's right. Well, what we got three down, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so three
Yeah,
more. Let's see
we're
what
there.
happens.
All right. This is the next story. Ready? I have no evidence, but I promise you all this story is real. Sorry for the wall of text. I've always been a bit of a skeptic ever since I was a kid. Scary stories don't faze me, horror games never frighten me, and whenever I hear something weird at night, I instantly assume it's something normal an animal or just the house settling. Despite this, something very unsettling happened to me the other day, and I'm really not sure what to make of it. I think it's the first time in years I've been genuinely frightened. I live in a forested area in the US. Me and my girlfriend live in a large cabin, and although there are roads nearby, our nearest neighbors are at least a kilometer away. We also have two cats, one of which sleeps in the bedroom with us, whilst the other often goes out at night and does whatever cats do when they're out of sight. Anyways, I like to stay up late at night and sleep late into the morning, whereas my girlfriend's an early bird. I was about It was about 1 in the morning and I was watching crappy TV in the living room whilst my girlfriend slept in the bedroom. I was beginning to grow tired when I heard something outside near the cat flap. For clarity, our cat flap uses an electronic chip, so only our cats can use it. I assumed it was just one of the cats coming into or leaving the house, and I ignored it. Then I heard it again. It sounded like something thudding against the flat. It happened several times at random intervals until I lost my patience and decided to just go and open the door. Clearly, the cat was having trouble getting in. I never thought about it at the time, but this was weird because we feed our cats well, and they're very lean rather than chubby. I passed the bedroom and peered in as I walked past to see if my girlfriend heard the noises. She was fast asleep. But the cat that sleeps with us was staring at the window. I called her name. Nothing. She kept staring. I shrugged it off and kept heading towards the kitchen. Back doors are through there, by the way. Anyway, so I reached the back door and saw a dark shape through the translucent flap. I sighed, expecting the cat to be out there, and opened the door. It took me a moment to open the door, and I saw the cat tense up as I opened the door. The door opened fully. I froze. It wasn't my cat. Whatever it was had started moving before I opened up, and I only caught a glimpse of a distorted figure, kind of like a tailless dog, bolting, and I mean absolutely pelting it. I freaked out and slammed the door shut. What the hell was that? I wasn't sure. My natural skepticism kicked in, and I assumed it was just my other cat, and I merely startled it. Perhaps the darkness had made it appear larger. Nevertheless, I was creeped out and decided to go to sleep. As I slipped into bed, I realized something horrifying. The second cat was asleep on the rug. It took a while to get to sleep that night. Everything seemed normal until a few hours later. I woke to a strange feeling of dread. Something wasn't right. My girlfriend was fast asleep. I held my breath and heard something creaking by the door. It sounded too loud to be one of the cats. It was as if a person was walking about. I reached towards my bedside cabinet and flicked on the lamp. The room was illuminated, and I saw something standing just outside the open door, staring at me. The same twisted figure I'd spotted outside earlier. It wasn't very tall, maybe a little over 5 feet, but it was its face that scared me the most. I only caught a glimpse of it, but what I saw will stay with me forever. It looked like a dog, but with an elongated face and almost human like eyes. You know that weird, distorted snarl hounds pull when they're pissed off? It had that expression. I instantly started yelling profanities as I scrabbled backwards, trying to straighten up. The creature turned and sprinted down the hall. I heard it dash outside and go past the window behind us, just above the headboard. I managed to look out as my girlfriend started to panic as she woke up fully. We both caught a glimpse of whatever the hell this thing was as it dashed off into the woods near our home. Grabbing my tree shotgun from beneath the bed, as well as a couple rounds from the ammunition box that sits next to it, I ran out of the room in my underwear and ran into the kitchen. The door was open. I'd forgotten to lock it when I saw the thing originally. I haven't seen it since, and we still live in our cabin, but I've bought sturdy locks for all of the main doors and windows in the house, and I always check the exit points at night. I also go to bed a bit earlier than I used to, so I'm asleep when the freaks of the night start to wake up. I've read a bunch of forums, and the only thing I can compare it to, based on what I saw, is a skinwalker. If you know anything about these things, please let me know.
Oh man. One second you think you're looking at your cat, and the next second it's something completely entirely
Dude, I mean,
different.
just, oh man, just imagine like you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go let my doggy in, and then like, or your cat, and it's not even your freaking cat,
I can't believe he didn't lock the door. It seems like he tried to, but he just
and he
didn't.
just forgot, like he was in
And
so much
like,
fear.
my goodness, like what could have come into your house, you know? Okay, well, hey, if
Mm.
you guys want to pause the podcast, I'm going
Oh
to
man,
take a crack at what I think it is. I'm going to guess that this one is a Quora story or Reddit.
it it's Reddit. Yeah, it's Reddit.
There's Reddit. Okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So our two Reddit stories came from
Before
r
Reddit.
slash no sleep.
Huh?
I said the two Reddit stories came from r slash no sleep, which is
Okay.
what we're going to be getting tonight. No sleep,
I know, right?
dude. After like before we get into our next story, I was sitting there because like before I film an episode with Steven, I like go over my info with my wife to kind of get insight if I'm doing if there's anything I need to tweak or add or whatever. And like I read some of these stories, man, and like I read um I read one of the course I read a Reddit story and then one of the ChatGPT stories to see if my wife could guess. And man, after reading these, like I was terrified. Like I had to lock the door.
Sheesh.
Oh man.
Well, we'll see if I can sleep tonight.
Two more.
I guess since we have two more stories, I guess the next story is my last guess.
Yeah.
Because once I find out the answer, then I'll automatically know what the last one is. So,
Okay. So
all right, my last guess. Our
let's
last guess.
yeah.
our s'mores. So here we go.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the top of the top of my page. I'd heard the stories growing up. Everyone in northern Arizona did, but I never really believed them. Just tales meant to scare kids to keep them from wandering too far from home. The elders spoke of witches, evil beings that could take the form of animals or humans, using their powers for darkness. They called them Ye Naalda Loshi, or skinwalkers. But it was just a story, till it wasn't. A few years back, I was visiting a friend on the Navajo reservation. James was someone I'd known since high school, a tough, no nonsense guy who didn't scare easy. He'd invited me out to his family's place for a weekend of camping and catching up. So I figured, why not? We set up camp near the edge of a mesa with a panoramic view of the vast desert below. The sun was setting, turning the sky a deep, bloody red. As night fell, James's uncle, an older man with weathered skin and deep set eyes, joined us by the fire. He was quiet, smoking a hand rolled cigarette, staring into the flames like he was seeing something beyond them. Be careful out here, he firmly said, breaking the silence. There are things in these lands that don't like to be disturbed. I glanced at James, who just shrugged it off, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. His uncle got up and left without another word, leaving us alone with the crackling fire and the vast darkness beyond. Later that night, as we sat drinking and telling stories, I noticed something odd. The air had grown still, unnervingly so. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just silence. Then, in the distance, I heard it. A faint sound like a coyote's howl, but distorted, almost human. James stiffened, his eyes narrowing as he listened. Stay close to the fire, he muttered, his voice low and serious. Whatever you do, don't go out there. I laughed it off, thinking he was just trying to mess with me, but then we heard it again, closer this time. A low, guttural growl, followed by what sounded like a person calling out. A voice that mimicked James perfectly, but with a cold, mocking edge. Help me. I felt a chill run down my spine. James grabbed his rifle, his face pale under the dim light of the fire. That's not me, he whispered. That's a skinwalker. Before I could ask what he meant, something moved just outside the firelight. It was fast, a blur of shadow that seemed to circle us, moving with an unnatural speed. The air grew heavy, oppressive, and the temperature dropped suddenly, as if the warmth of the fire was being sucked away. Then I saw it, just for a moment, a figure standing on the edge of the darkness. It was tall and gaunt, wrapped in a tattered cloak of animal skins. Its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light, reflecting the flames, and its face, it was human, but twisted, like a mask stretched over something not entirely human. It stared at us, and then, with a horrible creaking noise, it began to shift. The skin bubbled and warped, the bones snapping and rearranging under the surface. In seconds, it had taken the form of a coyote, but its eyes, those glowing, malevolent eyes, stayed the same. James fired a shot in the air, and the creature let out an ear-piercing scream, a sound that was both animal and human, filled with rage and pain. It dropped to all fours and bolted in the night, disappearing in the darkness. But the horror didn't end there. Throughout the night, we could hear it, circling our camp, moving just beyond the reach of the firelight. It would growl, snarl, and then mimic our voices, calling out to us in tones that were almost, but not quite right. The voices were wrong, too cold, too empty. Sorry, I lost my place. too cold, too empty, like the creature was mocking us, playing with us. James kept the fire blazing, and we stayed awake, clutching our weapons, knowing that if the fire died, we were done for. The hours dragged on, the night seemingly endless. The creature never attacked outright, but it kept up its terrifying game, never letting us rest, never letting us forget that it was out there. When dawn finally broke, the sounds stopped. The creature vanished with the first light of day, leaving us shaken and exhausted. James' uncle returned, his face grim. He said a prayer, scattering ashes around the camp, and told us to pack up and leave. Don't speak of this to anyone, he warned, his voice as serious as death. The more you talk about it, the more power it has over you. I didn't need to be told twice. We left that place as quickly as we could, and I haven't been back since. To this day, the memory haunts me. The glowing eyes, the twisted face, the way it mocked us with our own voices. I've tried to rationalize it, to tell myself it was just a nightmare, a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and fear. But deep down, I know what I saw. And I know that out there in the vast, empty desert, something ancient and evil still prowls the night, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross its path.
Very spooky. Very spooky. Oh my goodness, I'm getting chills just thinking.
Ugh.
Yeah, go ahead and pause the podcast episode if you want to guess before I do, but I am going to guess that this is a Chat GPT one.
Yeah.
Okay. I There's a little bit of cheating, but it sounded a lot like the other Chat GPT ones.
Yeah, it kind of had that to me
It
too.
was the state of Arizona. It talked about like the face being stretched over the creature, and then it had the Skinwalker mimicking the voice of the actual
And
person.
I also said, help me again, do that. I should have said something else.
That's
I'm
fine.
gonna kill you. I'll
Yeah,
get you. I'll get you and your little dog too.
yeah, something like that. But there was a few things where I was like, okay, this sounds somewhat similar to the other ones, to the other ChatGPT
Yeah.
story. So, but hey, I gotta say it though, ChatGPT is really good. I had no idea that the other one was ChatGPT. So
Yeah. All right. You ready for the
uh,
last story, and then we'll
that means
discuss what happened and change our diapers?
the last one's from Quora. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, cool. All right, last
All right.
story.
And
Let's
then we
wrap
can
up.
change our diapers.
Yep, let's wrap up this podcast episode.
Me and my family believe we are being stalked, hunted, haunted, teased by one or more skinwalkers. This has been going on for years, on and off. We live on a farm, and these entities are making more frequent appearances than ever as of late. My kids are scared as they've seen it several times, as well as myself and my husband. We've even believed there'd be one indoors from time to time. The glimpses I've seen at first glance appear to be a naked human, and it moves with extreme speed, faster than I'm able to keep an eye on. It peeks around corners of the outside of the house at my kids, makes human and animal cries at night. It's terrifying. We found doors unlocked and left open at night, and when we investigate, we catch a glimpse of it. Garage doors to garage doors that no one ever opens, mind you. There's no explanation for it. Living on a farm, we are used to the sounds of coyotes howling, barking, and different animals of prey screaming when attacked. The screams of what we're hearing lately are not the same sounds of coyote attacks. These are screams that sound human and blood curdling cries I've never heard before, anything like it before. I don't know if there is something that can be done to keep them at bay. I believe many of these evil entities come in and out of our dimension, but if love to keep them out if it's possible. There you go. Wow.
Short and sweet, but freaky nonetheless.
All right, you ready? I mean, this. I want to tell you what. I think this is going to be the scariest cryptid we cover.
I think so. I think with the other ones, like yeah, I mean there were scary elements about them, but I think that the almost near humanness of the Skinwalker gives it just that much more creepiness than maybe some
Yeah.
of the other. So, because I mean, you look at some of the other ones like Owlman or Mothman or the Chupacabra, and it's like, okay, oh, this is kind of a dog, or like this is some kind of type of owl or moth. But yeah, there is something uniquely disturbing about humans and what humans are capable
Yeah.
of. So when you have a creature or an entity or whatever this thing is that is near human but is
Well,
not
that's like the scary thing because, like,
that's
you
freaky.
think about like the uncanny valley,
Right.
and there's a theory with the uncanny valley that, like, okay, if you don't know what that is, basically the uncanny valley is the fear of something that almost looks human. So, like, like the Polar Express, that's uncanny valley. People get freaked out by that movie because it's very human but not human. You know what I mean? And so that's why, like, scientists have stated that there's a reason for us to have this fear of the uncanny valley, and it's because somewhere in our DNA we encountered something that was not human but almost human, and it developed that fear for us. So that's like what really, like, that's what just gets me about this, is like Steven and I, he could be over me and Maddie's place, and he could be sitting there and laying in bed, and he looks out at, and he or sitting in one of the rooms looking out the window, and he could just see me outside. Come here, Steven. Help me, Steven. And my voice, and it not be me. That is just terrifying,
Right. That's creepy. Right.
like
There's this.
when you talk about the other cryptids we've covered, you've got like the chupacabra. Okay, imagine like a dog looking thing that just sucks the blood out of the cattle. Okay, but then imagine seeing me outside talking to you in my voice, but it's not my voice.
It's freaky. There's
It's
something.
freaky.
There's something unnerving about that.
Oh man, it just, good lord, I'm not going. Oh man, I'm glad I'm married. I can cuddle my wife tonight and feel good about myself.
I'm gonna be sleeping by myself,
Well,
alone.
Simon sleeps in the same room with you,
So
does he?
nope, not anymore. So
Poor
yeah,
Steven.
no, I am all alone. So
Poor Steve.
yep.
Maybe the Bell Witch Dami Mommy or the Not Deer or one of
Oh,
your anime waifus can protect you tonight.
here we go. All right. Anyway, so without any further delay, well, any last minute thoughts, comments, concerns about the Skinwalker before we wrap up this episode?
Don't whistle at night, guys. Make sure you follow us on TikTok at Beyond the Campfire Podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Beyond Campfire. And then again, find us, if you don't just like listening to our voices, you want to see us, we're on YouTube, Beyond Campfire Podcast. But if you're listening on YouTube and you just want to hear our voices because you're sick of looking at our faces, we're on every other spot, like podcasting platform. Yep. And yeah, be on lookout for an announcement about the next podcast that's coming out underneath us. We're growing, guys. We're growing. I mean, 6 months down, and I truly hope that me and Steven can keep doing this and keep pushing out episodes, and we can make something out of this, guys. And we would not have been able to make it 6 months if it wasn't for our fans we have right now. I know we don't have a lot of people out there watching, but you know the only place from here is up.
Oh yeah.
So who knows what our 1 year episode would look like or our 2 year episode would look like. But yeah, be on the lookout, guys. Got a lot of great stuff coming. And like I said, go follow those places. It helps us, means a lot to us. And yeah, y'all have a spooky weekend. Try to get some sleep. I know this episode was kind of scary. Hey, if you live at home, you can always go jump in bed with mom and dad. And if you live by yourself, well, I'm sorry, but you're screwed. Good luck.
We'll see you guys.
Y'all have a, yep, we'll see you guys later. Y'all have a good weekend.